All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Neil Armstrong reporting the roll and pitch program, which puts Apollo 11 on a proper heading.
Active FM, this is The Void Show, another episode of The Void Show, as The Void Show always brings exciting, informative and beautiful news to you every day. Thank you so much for tuning in with us. I am Andrew Faladzi Wahakomu, your show host, and make sure that you do get in touch with us. You actually like and follow our page on Facebook. The Void Show has officially initiated a Facebook page. So make sure that you follow us there. You like the page so that you do not miss anything from The Void Show. The handle is at The Void Show with Andrew. So you can just search that and you will definitely find everything there. Now, this week we did take out a message to all our fans, to everyone. And the message was that, do you think that there's a relation between God and science? Should they be separated? And so today it's all about you. People did send in their voice notes. People did send in their messages. People did tell us what they are thinking about this subject. And I should really do say that it's quite a stretch from what I had expected. I was surprised when I got these answers. I mean, there are of course some answers that I had expected, but I think more than 50%, I should be honest, it's answers that I was not expecting. So today it's all about your voice notes, and thank you so much to those that did send in their voice notes. So make sure that you stick with us because you definitely want to hear what people think about science and God. You do? Really? So make sure that you do stick with us, because right after this, we're gonna get it rolling.
The wait is over.
Hold on tight. We are in the overdrive.
Welcome. This is your favorite station. Stay tuned. Turn up the volume.
Three, two, one. Just wanna see the light.
Let's go.
Active FM.
A 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for tuning in. Trust me, The Void Show, it's the only point in this universe that has all the topics, all the news, all the information, everything that's happening in this universe. So you want to make sure that you stick with us. Make sure that you do get in contact with us. Follow our page, like our page. It's on Facebook, and the handle is at The Void Show with Andrew. So if you can do that, you will never miss any episode from The Void Show. Plus, we do have some interesting jokes that we post there. So you definitely want to hear and want to see those kind of things that we have on The Void Show. Now, tell us again. Make sure that you go there, you post, and you tell us what you're thinking about science and God. And so science and God, this topic, honestly, it has been going around for decades, actually for thousands of years. It has been going around, and there has been conflicts, there has been arguments, there has been debates about science and God. And I should do say that it probably began by the time or actually when first mankind began to wonder about what's in the universe, and they started questioning themselves if there is a creator, not only when they were amazed by what's in the sky, but by the time actually science started to get in the picture, and depending on how compelling evidence was to them, they then started to question themselves if there is really a creator. So today we really did get some interesting voice notes and messages. You definitely want to hear what people think. I mean, you do. So I will be playing those just now. So yes, let me play the first verse note, and let's hear what one of our listeners has to say about science and God.
I'm Mahlati David Mafrika from Bloemfontein, currently attending at Central University of Technology, CUT in short. Yeah, regarding the topic, should we separate God and science? Yeah, answering the question, actually we should separate God and science, because science always say different things from what God says. It always going this way while God goes this way. Like, from my perspective, yes, we should separate them, because for instance, now if we could take from the Bible, like if God says this from the Bible, and science will say the thing which is against that. Because if God or the Bible would say that the human or the person, or let me just say the human, like the human was created by God, and the Bible says that, yeah, we get that the Bible says that, and the science will say the different thing from the evolution, and about the thing which is proven by the human being, which means the science is a human mind. And from my knowledge, from my believing, a human was created by God, meaning I can't take a thing which was created by the person like me against the thing which was planned by the God. And to me, like, God is greater than everything in the world. He is greater than everything. So like, we shouldn't mix the two. So to maybe from my perspective again, like, to reduce the confusion to our minds, and like, we shouldn't confuse science with God.
Leave him alone. And he did, of course, introduce himself. His name is Mahlati Mafrika, and he said he's from Bloemfontein. And obviously that was quite clear that he is saying things from a viewpoint or perspective of believing in God. So he believes in God. He's a believer, right? He's definitely a Christian. And so he said a lot of things. Obviously, people will always have things to say. So everybody will always have something to say at the end. So I think that's one of the things that we should clear out. Everyone will always have something to say. But for me, what stood out in all that he said that science is a human mind, right? Science is a human mind. And to all my philosophers, obviously science by definition can mean a lot more. But look, if you can't explain it in your own words, you simply don't understand it. I mean, at least that's how I think. If you can't explain it, then you don't know it. So yeah, that's what he said. Science is a human mind, and a human was created by God. He said, and according to my belief, a human was created by God. And so I cannot take a result over what made the result. that's simply what he said, and for me that really did stood out, and so shout out to him. Thank you so much for sending your voice note here. And obviously from him we should separate science and God, because they simply do different things. They obviously, according to him. So things are about to get hot in here. So are you ready for the next voice note? You might just have to hold tight to whatever you're sitting on, be it a chair, be it a bed, whatever. You might just have to hold tight on it, because here goes the second voice note.
So my take on God and science is quite long, but I'll try to keep it short. So the God concept was introduced to try to explain how life came about, to explain why life is the way it is, and to give purpose and meaning to life. While on the other hand, science was also created to define and describe how life came about, to try to understand the general dynamics of life. Both ideologies try to answer the same questions, but the difference is the approach. So seeing that with science, the philosophers back then were trying to actually study the natural phenomena, and then as it evolved, they came up with a systematic way of verifying the interactions of the natural phenomena, and actually coming up with explanations that we can test. So the difference between the God concept and science is that with science we have explanations and facts that we can actually verify by testing, going through the same experimentation and all. While with God, we don't really have a framework that we can say that, yeah, God exists. This and that is a result of the influence of God. So we don't really have a framework to verify the influence of God on life in general. But it's important to note that like in my studies in many religions, my perspective tells me that it's safe to conclude that the God concept and science don't contradict. So we can have a person who's both a scientist and a believer, but then it's also important to note that a person can be just a scientist without believing. A person can just be a believer without necessarily subscribing to science. But then comparing the two, science has a very long track record of improvements it has brought about in our lives, even though it also has its limits. But it does has a verifiable track record to say that, yeah, this was improved by science, that was improved by science, that was improved by science. Yeah, so like on a high level, that's my perspective about God and science.
Okay, that he forgot to introduce himself. His name is Lehlohonolo Sekokotwana, and interestingly, I have invited him at some time. I have interviewed him, and we were speaking about, are we taking it too far? So if you haven't listened to that show, you want to make sure that you go back and scroll down to all our podcasts, those that we did, and you will definitely find that show. He's brilliant. You want to make sure that you go catch that up. So I think he made things pretty much clear, and ideologies, both of these ideologies, I think that's a good lenient way to call them, attempts to answer same questions, but the difference is the approach in which they come about in answering these questions. I think that's true. And one thing about these same questions, to just someone, these questions would seem like extraordinarily difficult questions. They would seem like special. People who think of these questions are special, to just someone who sees these questions. But from a scientific point of view, these are like the most basic questions about the universe. So I think that's what I got. So here's another voice note, and right after this voice note, I'm going to share a bit of my thoughts, and we're going to go to a beautiful song by Active Worship. So make sure that you stick with us. Here's another voice note.
Hey Andrew, so I just saw the topic about the God and Science one, and speaking as an astrophysics student who is also relatively quite religious and faithful, I would think that they are compatible, and if anything, studying physics and studying science enhances my faith or makes it stronger, if anything, because there are precise, exact laws behind everything, and there was a giant energy source that caused the Big Bang. And if everything is governed in such a precise and perfect way, and we are the only living creatures in our solar system, or possibly in the universe, it is a very rare thing to happen, and that can't just be a coincidence. Such a big coincidence is not possible if everything has mathematics underlying it, or physics underlying it. Only something much bigger than all of us that understands something of this scale could make this possible, because coincidences don't have an exact pattern or calculations that you could do under everything. So yeah, I think they're completely compatible. I think in fact science sort of proves that there is a God out there. That's personally what I think.
By the way, for the previous voice note, so the one before the one I just played, for Lehlohonolo Sekokotwana, he's a master's graduate, so just to put that in context. And this one, she's an astrophysicist, an aspiring astrophysicist. She has actually came over, and she's also brilliant. We have interviewed her. We've had 3 shows with her, all of them brilliant. She's amazing. So you want to make sure that you go listen to that as well. And so for this one, she pretty much makes it clear that studying science and physics enhances her faith and makes it strong. So I think she believes that God actually brought science so that we understand more about his ways, because from what she says, studying science enhances her faith and makes it much more stronger. As she says, there are precise and exact laws behind anything, and such a big coincidence as this one, such things rarely happen, and so it cannot happen. There should be someone bigger than anything, than everything that exists, and obviously controls everything, because such a big coincidence is really not possible. So that was Javeria Matka, by the way. She has joined us over, and if you haven't listened to her shows, make sure that you go check them. But for now, we still have a great show coming for you. So here's a gem by Active Worship saying to you, the Pursue It. And right after this song, we are coming back with more voice notes and thoughts from all people all over the world. Enjoy.
Your presence. in the presence of the cross. I lift my hands in total awe and surrender, overwhelmed by the love that you display. Arms stretched wide, I'm so glad you made a way. I find myself in the presence of the cross. I lift my hands in total awe and surrender, overwhelmed by the love that you display. Arms stretched wide, I'm so glad you made a way.
The Pursuit by Active Worship. I hope you did really enjoy that song. Be sure to also connect with us on all our social media platforms. Active FM website, it's www.activefm.co.za. You're still with myself, your show host Andrew Faladzi Wahahomu. But by the way, the song that I just played right now, The Pursuit by Active Worship, just to put this in context, I mean, not to brag, I have actually interviewed someone who sings that song. So if you have not listened to that show, you probably want to go listen to it. He's not just a musician, he's also into computers. So the show was called This Becoming Digitalized World. So you definitely want to go and listen to it. I have interviewed him. I mean, I'm just saying. So if you haven't listened to it, please make sure to go and listen to it. By the way, we're still on Science and God, and I'm hoping that you're enjoying this show, because I am really enjoying it. We have heard what people think about science and God. Some are in the middle, some are on either of the sides, and I still have some texts that people sent over, and so I'm gonna read those to you. So another voice note here, it's coming through, so make sure that you listen to this one, listen to it carefully, and hear what this guy says about science and God.
Like, this is my take on the matter of God and science. The way people perceive God, I think, is stupid. That's leading to the conflict. No offense, by the way. As they are trying to give it/him a form outside one's own consciousness. God is not something you have to believe in. Thus, divine intervention shall befall unto you. God is a practice of enriching one's life, thus building a moral compass. And this viewpoint I have of God is nowhere in contrast with science, since science is not a belief but observations analyzed and explained to the best of our ability and accepted as fact if provable to better our understanding of the universe around us. Science is noting down facts about nature, or at least trying to interpret them. So I believe they can both exist in harmony, or at least according to my interpretation of both viewpoints.
We are there on Instagram. You just want to make sure that you search us. The Active FM Instagram page is at ActiveFM777. So go find that out and see what we've been up to during this quarantine time as Active FM DJs and personalities. So that is Mr. Rocks. Yes, that's how he refers to himself. And you did hear what his thoughts are. And so he says that God is a practice. Do you think that God is a practice? If you think so, I'd really appreciate to hear your side. I mean, he's saying that God is a practice, or at least how he sees God. He says that it's a practice, and at the end, towards the end of his voice note, we can really hear that he tries by all means to try and merge the two ideologies, but it's quite clear that he's leaning on science more, or at least I think. So he's saying that science is not a belief. So according to the way that he explained what science is, do you think that that's a good perception of how he sees science and how he sees God? And so do tell us. We would really love to hear your thoughts, what you're thinking about this matter. So I will be taking the last text, so I'm going to be rereading this last text, and it's quite a long text, so please just be sure to bear with us. And so here it goes. Science and the concepts of God should stay separated. Science is evidence-based, and as such, we can't associate it with the existence of a being that has presumably engineered the Big Bang nucleosynthesis, because there is no evidence of that being. The fact that science gave up on the ideas of the unobservable, privileged, inertial frame of reference either is enough to reject the idea of an unobservable God associating with science. We can't find the evidence of God, and therefore this universe has to be a godless universe, following the laws of probability. That is a deterministic universe where cause gives birth to effect, an idea that nothing happens without a reason, a universe where everything that happens as a result of something, or rather an event that took place prior. This ideology demolishes all the concepts of God, because even if one prays in a hope for different outcomes, those outcomes are only dependent on whatever happened prior. Meaning, prayers won't help unless they can somehow reverse time, which we know is not possible, let alone probable. If we don't separate God from science, then we are saying that we believe in the assumption that there's a being that can bend time and distort space, a being that can control space-time continuum at will, which logically doesn't make any sense. Not separating God from science entails that someone actually created the chaos that the Big Bang was born from, giving birth to the universe. An idea that does not only have evidence, but it's also impossible for it to hold unless we consider the 5 minutes hypothesis and Laplace's demon. But on the other hand, we can't immediately dismiss the idea of God just because he is unobserved. After all, Lorentz ideas of ether helped us understand a bit about light, leading us to finding the speed of light. Now, the idea of the ether gave us a step towards understanding time and space through the existence of light. Without the ether concepts, Einstein wouldn't have had motivation to formulate the special theory of relativity, and later the general theory of relativity. What I'm trying to say is that maybe the idea of an existing God can help us, or rather give us a push forward to understanding the mechanisms of the universe through the creator's perspectives, the same way we came to understand a bit about the nature of light through a presumably privileged reference frame, which can only be achieved if we consider the existence of God and science. That is not separating God from science. If we were to try and understand the universe from a creator's view, it would be obvious to assume that mathematics is the language the creator used in his marvelous creation, and philosophy would be the idea and rule that the language follows, and science would be the outcomes. That is the end product of creation. So God and science can be treated as one from a different point of view. That will need us to take 5 minutes hypothesis into account, an idea that 5 minutes ago a high being managed to recreate the universe, and every memory we have and the history about the universe were all implanted by that being. In summary, we should separate God from science, but we can consider God and science as one concept, provided we take some assumptions into account. By the way, his name is Clement, and he is a student. He is studying the physics behind the universe, and he said pretty much lots and lots of things. He said lots of stuff, complex stuff as well, and but there's a very simple point that he made. He said that if we were to try and understand the universe from a creator's viewpoint, it would be obvious to assume that mathematics is the language the creator used in his marvelous creation, and philosophy would be the idea and rule that the language follows, and science would be the product, right? It would be the outcome, it would be the end product of the creation. So he then says that in summary, we should separate God from science, but we can consider God and science as one concept, provided that we take some assumptions into account. Clearly, Clement is really much more on science. He does mention that he's on science. I mean, we pretty much heard on how he said things. So he's on science. Unless there's evidence that's proving God, he still remains on science. That's what he said. That's what Clement said. Right? He says there needs to be some assumptions that needs to be taken into account. Okay? Before we can actually merge science and God. Okay. Okay. Right after this, thank you. By the way, thank you so much for sending in your thoughts about science and God. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for doing that. And just after this, I will be sharing some of my thoughts, and I will be closing. By the way, thank you so much.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, are you
You can stream Reactive's very own The Movement album on Spotify and Apple iTunes. Reactive, it's a movement.
Okay, thank you so much for listening to Active FM on The Void show today. Unfortunately, we have less than 2 minutes to wrap up, but in just this time, let me just share my thoughts very quickly. Well, I believe that whatever that science brings to us is what has been brought by God himself, so that we study more about his voice, we study more about who he is and how he does things. And so when scientists, in inverted commas, when they're speaking about proof, obviously they're looking for physical proof. It's not like we're expecting some old man sitting in the middle of clouds with a stick. I mean, that's surely what most of us have perception of God. But I do not think that's what we're going to find, because when we study more about who God is, you find that he is not physical. So I do not think that we're going to find some physical evidence for proof of God's existence. Some of the evidence that we have, it's subjective. It comes from personal experiences, it comes from history, and even science as well does prove or actually does somehow squeezes the existence of God in it. So yeah, unfortunately we have reached the end of our time. Thank you so much for tuning in with us today. We had a great show. We loved, and thank you so much for those that shared their thoughts. We loved hearing your thoughts. Make sure that you get in contact with us. We have a Facebook official social page for The Void Show, though the handle is at The Void Show with Andrew. We are there on TikTok, Active FM. YouTube, we are there, Active FM. So make sure that you go subscribe to the YouTube channel and you click that notifications button so that you don't miss any episode from all our shows. www.activefm.co.za, Twitter at ActiveFM, Instagram at ActiveFM777, and last but not least, Facebook, it's /ActiveFM. Hope you have a great week. We love you. Thank you so much. See you next time, same place. This is The Void Show, and radio has never been better.
Expose him! Expose him!
Active FM.
Active FM. Active FM.